Have you ever booked a flight online and just marveled at how it works? You type in a city and bam, dozens of airlines, all their prices right there in seconds. It feels a lot like magic, doesn't it? Well, it's not. It's powered by a revolutionary piece of database history that most of us have never even heard of. So let's pull back the curtain on the hidden system that completely changed travel forever.
To really get this, you got to go back in time with me. Imagine it's the 1980s. Booking a flight was a total nightmare. For a travel agent, it meant hours and hours on the phone calling different airlines one by one. They were juggling these separate, clunky terminals for each carrier, manually trying to stitch together a single trip. Now, compare that to today. A few clicks, instant confirmation. The gigantic leap between these two worlds? It's all thanks to a technology called the Global Distribution System, or GDS for short.
All right, so here's our flight plan. First, we'll look at the disconnected world that made this whole thing necessary. Then, we'll see the centralized solution that came to the rescue. We'll meet the big three companies that basically ran the show, witness the incredible revolution this sparked in travel, and finally, we'll unpack its lasting legacy that you and I still use today.
Okay, let's dive into part one. We're setting the scene in the 1980s, and honestly, the world of travel booking was just pure, unadulterated chaos.
So get this, it's not that airlines didn't have computers. They did. They had their own internal systems to track their own flights and seats. But here's the kicker. All those systems were completely walled off from each other. They were total silos. A travel agent couldn't see into any of them. They were completely locked out, forced to pick up the good old-fashioned telephone to check if a seat was even available, one airline at a time.
What this all meant was a massive, industry-wide bottleneck. There was no single place to look up flight info, no way to see if you could fly out on one airline and back on another, and absolutely no real-time coordination. Booking a trip with a simple connection could take hours, even days. The entire process was just painfully slow and inefficient for everybody.
Right, so it was pretty obvious this couldn't last. The industry was crying out for a single source of truth, a centralized platform that could finally bring some order to all this madness.
And that solution was the Global Distribution System. The easiest way to think about it is like a giant shared digital library for the entire airline industry. It was this neutral central hub where all the airlines could upload their books, their flight schedules, their prices, how many seats were left, and then travel agents could get a library card and access everything from one single place. And the way it worked was just brilliantly simple. Step 1, airlines push all their vital data into the GDS. Step 2, travel agents, using one standardized interface, could search that massive database to find and book pretty much any flight. And step 3, the GDS handled the rest, all the messy back-end stuff like ticketing, payments, and building the itinerary, all in real time. It was the ultimate middleman. And we're not talking about some simple app here. Oh no, this was serious, heavy-duty tech. These platforms were built on incredibly powerful relational databases, running on enormous mainframes and big Unix systems. These things were absolute workhorses, designed from the ground up for insane speed and reliability, because if they went down, the entire global travel industry could grind to a halt.
So, as you can imagine, this revolutionary idea didn't stay secret for long. Pretty quickly, a few dominant players emerged to build the very infrastructure that would power global travel for the next few decades.
And really, it all came down to three major platforms. Over in Europe, you had Amadeus, which was started by a group of big national carriers like Air France and Lufthansa. And here in North America, the two heavyweights were Galileo and WorldSpan, both also born from partnerships between the major U.S. airlines at the time. Now, make no mistake, these guys were fierce competitors. They all had their own tech, their own ways of doing things. But deep down, they were all chasing the exact same dream, building a system with truly global reach that could give anyone, anywhere, real-time access to the world's travel inventory.
So now we have these incredibly powerful centralized systems in place. And as you can guess, the entire travel industry was about to be turned completely upside down. The impact was just massive.
And I mean, the scale of this was just mind-boggling. At their peak, these GDS platforms were processing millions and millions of transactions every single day. Think about that. Every search, every booking, every single ticket change from agents all over the world flowed through these massive databases.
And absolutely everyone felt the change. For travel agents, what used to take hours of phone calls now took just a few seconds of typing. For the airlines, this was a total game changer. Suddenly, they could sell their seats to a global network of agents instantly. And for passengers, well, for you and me, it meant way more options, better prices from the competition, and just ridiculously faster service. It was a win-win-win. But the story doesn't stop at the travel agent's desk. Not even close. In fact, you could argue the biggest legacy of the GDS is how it directly paved the way for the online travel boom we all live in today.
Just look at how this played out. Through the 80s and 90s, the GDS becomes the absolute backbone of the industry. But then in the 2000s, you see a new kind of company pop up, the online travel agency, the OTA. Now, sites like Expedia didn't go out and rebuild this entire system. Why would they? They did something much smarter. They just built a nice-looking website and plugged it directly into the GDS databases that already existed.
And that is the key takeaway here. Every single time you search for a flight on Kayak or Expedia or even Google Flights, you are tapping into the direct legacy of these incredible shared databases that were first fired up way back in the 1980s. The entire online travel world we take for granted was built right on top of this invisible foundation.
It really makes you think, right? The GDS is this perfect example of a foundational technology that's completely hidden from view, but that reshaped an entire industry and, our daily lives without most of us ever knowing its name. Which kind of leaves me wondering what other hidden databases are out there, quietly powering your world today.